What if I told you the real reason you and your business aren't growing isn't because you're not working hard enough, but because you're still chasing practical provision instead of purposeful position? It's like creating a clickbait video on YouTube for it to just go viral, just to monetize, instead of creating a video that provides real value, even though you might only get one view from it. Sure, it's practical and might even be fun to create a video that resonates with the world, but you have to ask yourself, is it worth the trade-off of sharing truth, testimony, and teachings that align with your mission? I stopped chasing money and something unexpected happened. The truth is, I used to chase money like it was a scoreboard. Literally, I was addicted to sports betting. Game days weren't even fun if I didn't have money on the line. I knew the spreads better than I knew my scripture. It was 3 years ago. I was up $60,000 in the first 2 months of the football season, playing $2,000 to $3,000 per game, 5+ games per day. And I remember I went to my first church service at Love of Christ Fellowship Church in person since the pandemic, and the senior pastor, Arthur Benjamin, was preaching on gambling and addiction. I still placed bets from the pews while he was preaching the message from the pulpit. I lost every single game that day, totaling $15,000 just that Sunday alone. And I would go on to lose $100,000 total over the next 2 months. Sad to say, that was just the first time. The first time? Yes, the first time that I'd lose that large sum of money to gambling. And to make matters worse, I had always been the finance guy, the entrepreneur, the investor, the person good with money. I even planned to be a financial advisor after college. I taught workshops on financial literacy and was swing trading from 18 to 23 years old, which is really how I amassed my early wealth. But that's for another story. You see, I would always in my flesh, without realizing, consider gambling, quote unquote, a quicker investment than my trades in the stock market or crypto. Boy, was I wrong. I was spiritually blind to the gambling addiction, and the enemy had a foothold on my life until February 10th last year, when I was up $15,000 in 1 week, and by the end of the week, I was down $20,000. That's a $35K net loss. And that's when the Spirit revealed to me my addiction. I was stuck in this cycle of chasing the next win without even realizing I was ensnared the entire time. I was broken, and I had to be. From the identity of financial control, but also to the addiction, I almost lost everything. Stewardship with God felt broken, marriage broken, personal and business bank accounts felt broken. You name it, it was broken. The only thing that was secure was my relationship with God at that point, because he reminded me that night that first and foremost, you're my son. And he told me to get up and go to my wife, to my parents, confess and ask for forgiveness and some help. And that night was the most humbling position I've been in my entire life. And I'm blessed to say that I have been delivered, completely delivered from that addiction since then, and now back in a season of harvest. Here's what I realized. I was calling it entrepreneurship and quicker investing, but I was really just worshiping the increase. I wasn't building from purpose. I was building from pain, pressure, and performance. Now here's why this message matters. I'm Christian Graham, co-founder and CEO of Maricross Media and the MK Lab. And I teach entrepreneurs, coaches, and creatives biblical business, economics, and stewardship that doesn't just make income, but creates impact and influence for the glory of God. And today, I'm breaking down how I went from chasing the bag to stewarding the blessing. This video isn't just about making more money, it's about how to break free from your worldly grip on money and business so that you can step into a kingdom-based model of business, finance, and freedom. Point number 1, chasing money creates lack, not abundance. Psychologically, when we chase money, we trigger what behavioral economists Senhill and Elder call the scarcity mindset. Our brain enters survival mode, narrowing our vision to just what's missing. We become reactive, impulsive, anxious, and ironically, we repel the very provision we're trying to attract. This phenomenon is also known as goal substitution effect. When people substitute deep goals like purpose, connection, legacy for shallow ones, money and status, their happiness and performance both decline. Why? Because they're not motivated by meaning, but by measuring. Chasing money creates anxiety over what you don't have yet, which becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of lack. Let's bring this to scripture. From the very beginning, God created the Garden of Eden, which represented absence of sin, perfect harmony with God, a place of God's design and abundance. Conversely, Eve in Genesis 3:5-7 was offered lack from the serpent, even though she had already had everything. Yes, God told her she could have everything except one thing, and yet she chased more desired more, and in turn lost abundance. But not only for her, but Adam too. The serpent didn't give them poverty, but instead gave them a mindset of scarcity and lack. They focused on a shallow goal of personal desire and practical provision instead of a deeper goal of purposeful positioning and a heart of obedience. See, you pray for provision, but your motive is accumulation, not assign me. You chase money for you and the desires of your heart, and then wonder why you're feeling so insecure. This is called spiritual tunneling. It's the same as cognitive scarcity, a mind so focused on gain it can't steward grace, gladness, or joy. You see, money isn't inherently bad, but the mindset and heart set behind it matters. When your motive is provision without purpose, God withholds not to punish, but to protect your calling. You have to shift your mindset because chasing equals scarcity and stewarding equates to sustainable success. James 4:3 says, "You ask and you do not receive because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your passions." God doesn't bless selfish ambition, he blesses stewardship. Point number 2, building with pressure leads to burnout, not breakthrough. When you're in this cycle of chasing money, you don't just lose finances, you start to lose yourself. You're built from pressure, not purpose. I was moving from revelation to revelation, and I was reacting from fear. Fear of having less, fear of looking like a failure, fear of not being that guy anymore. When pressure becomes your builder, burnout becomes your blueprint. According to the self-determination theory, people who are externally motivated by rewards, fear, or image rather than internal values experience lower performance, lower well-being, and higher rates of burnout. And I was living proof of that. The more I performed to stay relevant or secure the bag, the more empty I felt, even in the highest of high times. I've made over $100,000 in one day multiple times, and I still felt empty. I ended up blowing it all off. I was buying assets and masking it in investing in quick returns. But really, I was running from inadequacy by chasing identity through income. I used to think if I just worked harder, invested smarter, or pushed further, I'd finally feel peace. But you can't hustle your way into a promise that's only assessed through obedience. Let's talk about Saul, the first king of Israel. He was anointed by God, yet disqualified himself because he built under pressure. In 1 Samuel 13, Saul was told to wait for the prophet Samuel to offer a sacrifice before battle. But when the people started leaving, when things didn't go as planned, when pressure mounted, Saul caved. He would go on to offer the sacrifice himself, something only the prophet was ordained to do. He took control out of fear and lost the favor of God. 1 Samuel 13:13-14 says, "You have done foolish thing. Now your kingdom will not endure." Saul didn't lose because he lacked talent. He lost because he succumbed to pressure instead of trusting God's timing and the positioning of the prophet Samuel. You do the exact same thing. When clients pull out, when revenue dips, when people aren't subscribing or following, you start forcing results instead of waiting on God. And when you operate like Saul, panicking under pressure, you might produce something, but it won't be blessed. Point number 3, you can't multiply what you don't first surrender. One of the most painful and freeing things I had to learn was you can't multiply what you haven't first surrendered. And you especially can't surrender something you still idolize. See, I didn't just have a money problem, I had a mastery problem. Money still mastered me. The desire for financial control kept me from spiritual clarity. In life and in business, we fear losing control more than we desire meaningful gains. This is a psychological principle known as loss aversion and control bias. When entrepreneurs anchor themselves and their self-worth to money, they resist surrender because they equate release with failure. But in kingdom economics, surrender is not loss, it's leverage. You have to stop asking yourself, how can I make more? And start asking the Lord, what have you already placed in my hands? This allows you to reposition yourself from striving in your own strength to stewarding in grace. God did it for me, and he can do it for you too. He began to multiply what I had, even the parts I thought were dead. So take a moment to meditate on this. What are you still holding on to right now? Is it control of finances, fear of lack, losing clients by raising prices, an offer stack that prints money but doesn't align? Next, ask yourself, who is this really for? If your motive is practical provision and not purposeful positioning, it could very well be the enemy putting it in your hands. Because what we don't surrender, we still believe we own. When I finally laid my addiction down, my financial control down, and even my identity as the finance guy down, that's when I saw God do more with less. He didn't just multiply my business, he multiplied my peace and my purpose. And he can do the same for you too. So if you've been building from pressure instead of peace, if you've been chasing provision instead of living from position, if you're calling it entrepreneurship, but deep down you know it's really survival mode with a nice logo, this is your wake-up call. I'm living proof that God won't bless what you refuse to surrender. And it's not because he's trying to punish you, it's because he's trying to position you. I had to lose the identity I built in the world so he could give me the one built on the word. And I can tell you this with full confidence today, I am more free, more fruitful, and more focused now that I yield to God in every area of my life. So here's what I want you to do right now. Reflect on what area of business you have been gripping onto instead of giving to God. Comment surrendered below if this message hits you. I want to personally pray for you this week. And lastly, subscribe and hit the notification bell if you know you need more than just business advice. You need biblical alignment and real spiritual authority in how you build. This channel isn't for viral chasers, it's for kingdom builders. People like you who aren't just trying to go viral, but want to go vertical. People who don't just want income, but want impact and influence with God. So let's stop chasing the bag and start stewarding the blessing. Stay blessed, stay grounded, let's grow. Peace.